Yeah, I think first of all, it's very true what you point out, that it affects all of us. So it affects us as therapists, as human beings, and our clients. And so it affects us as a community, right, of human beings and sharing situations. And then more specifically, I think we all have to somehow manage this situation around health and illness, which affects directly our bodily beings and therefore directly us as dance movement therapists in our work also. But also we have all these processes going on around the illness, which means that people are losing their health or they are losing loved ones. So there's a lot of mourning going on, I think, without us being able to properly apply our morning rituals. And I think that is really a major thing that I see happening, that there is a lot of experiential layers built up, or there are built up a lot of experiential layers. And we are not yet in a place where we can work through it completely. We have to live through it, but we cannot work through it completely in terms of processing these experiences. And that is what I feel in therapy, really coming into the therapy space, that people come with their experience, they come with their pain and their mourning, and they come with their feelings around this threat of falling ill. For many people, this is a big threat in their life. So they withdraw from their daily routines, maybe even more than would strictly be needed. Yeah, so I think that if we look into this year, that there's also some changes in how we manage it. So in the Netherlands during the first lockdown, for example, what I saw is that people had a clear perspective. So there was this lockdown, one would live through it, and then one would return to normal life, right? But then that didn't happen. We had a brief summer where we somehow were able to recover from this first wave. But then we went into a second wave, and now we're on a third wave. And so we see that this perspective of I'm falling ill or I'm in a crisis and I can recover from that, that really changed, because there's a crisis and then another one and another one and another one. So our perception of I can handle this situation and I can recover from it. So what would be typically a resilient pattern also in terms of movement, right? So I attach to this crisis. I acknowledge that I'm in crisis. I acknowledge that I'm in this illness, or I acknowledge that I'm in this grief or in this mourning. And then from there, I can build again towards resilient patterns. So that really was affected in a way by this repetition of waves and lockdown. That's what I. Then more specifically to the question that you're putting in terms of attachment, right? I think that there's really a major thing happening. I just had a lady here in the studio space this morning who told me about a child that was born and how sad it was that she couldn't go over there and yeah, take the child in her arms and feel the child, because that would be very threatening for the parents. And so there was this story that there's a sort of regulation that children should not be taken by other than the parents for the first 3 weeks, something like that. So now our Dutch ritual around childbirth would be that family comes in, friends come in, and they all would carry this child and welcome this child into the world. They really do that by carrying ooh and cuckooing with it and really, really welcoming and forming a welcoming community also for the parents who are newborn parents then in that case. So this community building and this holding environment that comes with it is not built in a way as it would be normally. So these parents, young parents now in this year, they are really experiencing a very different thing. And I think that really also goes into their own patterns of parenting, these holding patterns, the welcoming patterns of the baby. really. Addressing the caring, carrying the weight of the child. So now these parents have to do it in a quite isolated situation, actually, if you compare it to our usual rituals around childbirth here in the Netherlands. This ritual might be different in other countries. They are culturally informed, of course. But just to give an example on where it really touches immediately upon our work, right? Because that is another thing that I've been witnessing, and we have been talking about this before, is that the loss of touch, the regulation towards distancing, the threat that comes with being in touch with other people, so the threat of falling ill or getting the illness or catching the virus, that really puts us in these distancing patterns. And that for many clients, I found, bring up early attachment themes and patterns. So where the mismatches, where the experience distance also was related to being left alone, not being taken care of, or being ignored, not being seen, right? So all these very fundamental themes around attachment and where attachment patterns build from really surface very strongly. So these are just two examples of how the regulation and what is now our safe place, the distance, really brings, yeah, also quite some challenges, at least, right? Yeah, well, I think there are a couple of options to it, right? I mean, that also depends on how we understand our professional domain or our modality. And I think that, yeah, first of all, it's on the level of being a body history. There's also something that we can address when we work in therapy around this these changes of the community rituals. We can address, of course, body memory about rituals, about being welcomed into a community. We can address and activate body memories about being part of a community, maybe being part of a holding community. And then from there, find new ways of building this community. So I think, for example, and then I come more from the dance perspective, the theme of distancing, one might say, oh, well, then we lose touch and we are not in touch anymore, which might be true. But there are also people who say, oh, well, I'm actually pretty fine with the distance because then I can feel my personal space better. Because people are not coming into my personal space all the time, they keep the distance, so I feel pretty safe actually in the distancing regulation. These people are also out there and they somehow profit, one might say, from the safety that is built because people do not intrude into personal space all the time. Now, in dance, I think we are very much trained in feeling the other person even over a distance or across a distance, right? So we have this, I talked about it another time, this bird flock feeling, so that we can change with other people through space. That is true for many dances. So it's true for folk dance, for example, where we see big groups moving together, even if they are not in direct touch with each other. So they feel where the movement goes. We have that in ballroom dances where a couple might dance without having the actual touch and cover a large amount of space and being perfectly in sync with each other, right? And the music might help, but also just from the feeling. And we see it in many public spaces that people move perfectly well with their distances without getting literally in touch, but they are somehow sensing about where the movement goes, right? And if you would activate that sense in the dance movement therapy and work from there, that's my experience, that once people get more into connection with their sensing the other across the distance, they can start building up this feeling of being connected again and feeling being in touch, although there is some space in between the bodies, they can feel space as a connector between them and the other, right? So, and that's really, I think, where we are very skilled to build procedures to work from. So that might be spatial procedures, but that might also be time procedures, being together in time, being together in rhythm and thinking. So that also might generate a feeling of being connected or being in a community if we build shared rhythms or shared spaces, right? Or feeling engagement by the other, engaging with their weight towards us, or distancing with weight from us, which is still related to us as the other, right? So there we can feel addressed, we can feel being part of and feel sharing qualities, right? So that are a couple of examples where I would think that really dance therapy can support people to recuperate and relive a feeling of connectedness and being in touch, being attached through distance, which for me personally was really also sort of discovery to feel, oh, well, we can work with this distance and still build connection, build attachment, and also develop from that.